Excellent question. So you probably don't want to have, I mean, you can, I've seen it a few different ways. If you have a reference letter, you can attach it, put it at the end of your resume. I guess to back up at the, way back, when you submit a resume, I think it's actually, if you support or submit one document, that page 1 is a cover letter, and you don't need a cover letter, but if you have one, make it a good one. You have your resume, which should generally be 1 or 2 pages. If it's a student position, also attach your transcripts. And then you can attach letters of reference and stuff like that. On the end of your resume, if you have references, that's putting the names on it. That's probably an okay thing, especially if it's in the same industry, right? So, but if you put references on it, be prepared that someone like me might call the references before I even call you. Oh, this guy, this guy worked for Susie. I'm going to call Susie to see if this person's any good before I even talk to the candidate, right? Or, whichever, right? So it sometimes will get yourself in the door. It sometimes lets you know if you happen to know somebody at the company, right, who referred you. So from a student perspective, it might help you get shortlisted. If you're not a student, probably not as much, but a student, there's some advantages. So the flip side is you want to stand out appropriately. I can think of a lot of folks at career fairs that have stood out for the wrong reason. So, in terms of, be prepared, right? Have your resume ready if they need it. Dress like you're actually looking for a job and not that you just came from the gym. Ensure that, personal hygiene issues are taken care of, all of that kind of stuff, right? You want to make sure that there's nothing bad, I guess, for one, right? Doing a little bit of research on the company makes a huge deal. Actually capitalizing it. There's been so many career fairs that I've been to that people recognize me somehow. Which is sometimes a little scary, but it's just like, oh, you're Mike, aren't you? It's just like, yes, but why do you know that? Like but things like that stay with me a little bit longer. And I should have turned off my phone, but that's okay. And then taking it a step further is that follow-up, right? So if someone sends me an email, if someone tracks me down on LinkedIn and says, hey, I chatted with you at the career fair, that reinforces that conversation, right? It reinforces that they weren't just going through the motions, that they actually cared about the company they were with. They were actually talking. It was engaging. What you don't want to do is come up, give the resume and say, yeah, I'm a chemical engineer, so tell me, what do you have for me? Or do you have a job for me? Or I mean, it's okay, because in a sense, somebody has to start somewhere. And if you're at least doing that, you're getting out of your comfort zone. So it is good. I'm not saying don't do it, but take it a step further if you can, right? Know where your starting point is, and hopefully where you can go to. But like I said, if you're prepared, if you somehow have an interactive conversation, right? You want to have a conversation, not just a data dump. So figure out, and I mean, you can't have that with everybody. Sometimes there's 100 booths and you can't interview or research 100 different places, right? But who knows? Maybe maybe if it's busy, you have your phone, you do a quick Google search on that company so that you at least know 2 things about them, right? What kind of industry they're in, or something. That might help you. So many of these questions sound scripted, and they sound scripted because they are, right? You're coming with a list of questions, and you feel that when the recruiter says, so do you have any questions? You feel that you should have something to say, right? That is the right thing to do. And absolutely, you should be asking a question. But hopefully the interview process itself is a bit of a conversation, right? So it's not just all of a sudden a hard stop and all of a sudden you're then asking away things. So so the type of questions that are good is asking about the type of projects that they're working on and the team. And so, so you talked about, your team does this. What kind of projects have the student done in the past? What have been some of those big deliverables? What, if you can, a little bit more insightful of, I took this thermodynamics class, and, I thought this one prof was wonky because he was talking about this, but is this principle, can that be used in that? Or I've taken this, you're trying to sell yourself and embed your passion into that job. And how do you ask questions that show that you're actually passionate about what the interviewer is asking, right? So while you have some really, tell me about projects, or tell me about, what student achievements or whatever. And those are good starting points. There's no one good question for all situations, right? You have to sort of read the interview and ask about it, right? And take your passion into things. But asking about what you're looking for and is it a match to that company, right, is a good thing, as long as you're not asking about money. Is this, is this job going to pay me enough? You just have to assume it is. But yeah, talking about project, talking about the work, talking about the scope, somehow engaging with what you're interested in is the way to go. There's always the basic questions too, of if they're not very clear, right? What's the actual job description? What's the hours of work? What's the, but, in terms of understanding some of those expectations, but if they've already said them, it might not be the best part to ask. So I'll put it back to you of why are you applying for a certain job, right? What's the important part for you? Is it the money or is it the experience? And so if it's the experience, if it's the projects, if it's this, it's that, that's where your questions should be. Now about the money, obviously sometimes it needs to happen. You could ask in terms of, what's the, and this is the kind of a way of getting around the pure money. What's that total compensation package look like? Can you talk about things like, the relocation and the student social clubs and the, those extra perks that come with the job, right? If you talk about it a little bit more open-ended like that, they can then talk about the base salary if they want, but it then gives them the impression that you're not so much looking after that base salary, but you're wanting to know the whole meal deal, right? Asking them, how many, actually, here's a good question. If it's important to you, what's the chances that this position could turn into a permanent job afterwards? How many previous students do you hire permanent once they've graduated? Have you hired people like that? What does that look like? Do you hire returning students? Or is it a one and done kind of approach? Because again, what is it that you're looking for? Well, hopefully you're wanting a full-time job in XYZ skill set. Yeah, no, I haven't. Well, I have seen some QR codes on their resume that takes them to like their LinkedIn profile, but no like weird riddle, but it's kind of like, okay, well, I have your resume right in front of me. Why are you giving me a hyperlink to see the same thing? Anyway, it is what it is. But so no, I haven't seen anything quite like that. Pictures remain to be generally no-goes on resumes. I mean, unless that picture is something very very specific to the type of position you're applying for, you probably don't want to have a picture on your resume. More so international students, because things are done differently outside of Canada than they are here, where sometimes there's a whole lot of personal information of, you know, are they married and their age and how many kids and all of that stuff. I mean, that doesn't need to be on the resume, obviously. Again, unless there's some really unique one-of reason for it, but generally, you know, you don't need to have that. The resume, though, you know, I talked a little bit, but, you know, I'll look at a resume for 10 to 30 seconds, right? So you need to make sure that the information on your resume, the things that I need to see, are easy to find. And it sounds like school is just getting out, so it's it might be a little loud here, but it's you need to make sure that that stuff is easy to find. So from an experienced person's resume, their education might be hiding at the very bottom on the second page, third page, whatever else, right? From a student, it should be right up at the top. That's one of the most important things for a student, right? Is that, what are you studying? And what I see, especially for student positions, is it's sometimes hard for me to know, or are they a student or aren't they? When the heck did they graduate? What are they actually taking? You know, what are they looking for, right? Someone who's taken, and you know, I pick on BCom a little bit because you can go into so many different ways, right? Whether it's HR, finance, accounting, you know, whichever, supply chain, you can go into so many things. And so like, it needs to be a little bit more clear. And even from an engineering perspective of, well, I'll pick on civil engineering. The good thing with civil engineering is there's a lot of project management courses in that curriculum, right? But they're still a student. So when they graduate, or even as a student, they're not going to be assigned a $1 billion project to manage. It doesn't really matter what their education is. They don't have that experience. And so making sure that your resume is actually tailored to the right appropriate level of the job that you might get. Where I've seen, like I said, some blunders of people thinking that they're all of a sudden going to get paid $1 gazillion and manage the world and, you know, whatever else. And that might not be the case in most circumstances. Well, I like that. I mean, I like the networking side of things, right? I am one of those weirdos that love career fairs. And one of the girls I work with was talking about, well, maybe there's actually a business option for me to rent myself out to companies and I'll attend career fairs for them. Like, I'll be there and I'll just be, you know, the loud guy saying how great a company is, right? I think anyway, so if anyone's listening and they have, you know, a lead for me, let me know. But I like that kind of stuff. I like going to the SFC events and interacting with students and helping people grow and seeing their careers flourish and that kind of stuff, right? So those are things that drive me. But I'm very loud, I'm very vocal, I'm energetic. I mean, there's not a lot of, I mean, there's people like me, but not everyone's like that, right? So I like those connections. So do I love looking at resumes? Of course not. That's why I only look at them for about 5.5 seconds at a time, right? Like it's, but some people do. There are people that will read every single word in your resume and dissect exactly what you mean by it, and not me. But I like talking to people. I like, kind of, so that's what drives me, right? I like things like this. But it's different because, like I said, there's lots of folks out there that that aren't as extroverted, and they, so if you're thinking, okay, Mike's crazy, I'd be intimidated to talk to him. That's okay, because most of the people at these career fairs are probably closer to you, right? Not quite so crazy like me, but that's okay. Does that answer your question? That was kind of a little bit of a excellent.
No, that was fantastic. Mike, thank you so much for all of your time. The presentation was super informative, and your answers to all of our Q&As were very helpful. I think that we all maybe have some revision to do on our own LinkedIns and resumes. So it's always great when we have some takeaways and some self-improvement to be done. But
Excellent.
really appreciate your time.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks so much. Take care.
Bye.